boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of Prime Video's The Boys, Season 4, Episode 6, entitled Dirty Business. And there wasn't a more fitting title for an episode than this one. How are you doing? I'm glad that you all decided to join me for this review of The Boys, Episode 6. This was a very good episode. Very good episode. Look, The Boys has yet to let me down. I was expecting nothing less from this show, but this was very interesting on so many fronts and disturbing on so many so many fronts as well. Dirty Business, it's a double meaning. It's a double meaning. You may think of it as just nasty stuff that's going on, which in some circles it is nasty, but in other circles it's par for the course. But the political side of things, the dirty business, which anything political in my view is dirty business. But you have a lot going on in this episode, a lot to follow, and we have some big reveals in this episode as well. One of my theories came to fruition, which I'm excited about, and another theory that I had was shot down with a missile, but that's fine. That's okay. But I still, even though it was kind of shot down, I'm still holding on to hope that I was right. Because a lot of things still don't add up to me, but we'll get to that when we left off from episode 5, which was kind of a tearjerker in one instance with the death of Huey's father, and what Huey had to do to kind of sacrifice his father, or his father being receptive to it because of the compound V basically turning him into a killing machine. And Butcher and quote unquote Joe holding Dr. I'm blanking on his name now, but the doctor holding him in a barn in Veronica's farmhouse with his leg cut off so he can cook up a new batch of that soup virus that will wipe out Homelander. And so we have a lot of things going into this episode. This episode starts off with Huey and his mother taking this tour that is Made in Manhattan, which was a horrible movie. They even mentioned it on the show, but they taking this tour, and his father loved that movie, so his final wishes for his ashes to be spread on that tour. So Huey, his mother, Starlight, Chemical, Mother's Milk, they were all there with him as they spread the ashes. Now, my theory was, and I boasted it from the mountaintops, that Huey's mother wasn't real, that was a figment of his imagination and all this here. And I was so convinced that she was. And then we get the scene when a passerby spots Starlight and screams out that abortion is murder and curses her out and all this here. And Starlight curses him back out. And she apologizes to Huey's mother. She acknowledges her presence. And this is the first time on the show that anybody other than Huey has interacted. Well, Huey's dad did, but I took that as he took the compound V. That's how he was able to see her. But other than those two, this was the first time somebody acknowledged her. So now I'm like, okay, so she really is there. And so I was hurt. I was a little hurt by that reveal, but nonetheless, we move forward. But touching in on this abortion thing, and abortion comes up again later on in this episode. And, I really admire this show. I really admire this show for not shying away from tough issues. And I mean tough. They're abortion is not the only thing, but this has been a thread throughout this season here with the abortion issue, and we know this is a real life issue that's ongoing, and they don't shy away from it. And I admire them, whether you agree or not. You have to admire it. They're sticking to their guns here, but it's done in a way, and this is why I admire it. It's done in a way where it's not really pressing a certain issue to one side or the other. It's really not, because this is such a complicated thing, and that's always my thoughts with the abortion issue. It's such a complicated thing. It's not a singular issue. These women that do this are affected by it as well. It's not happy go lucky, and the show is doing a good job of showing that, I feel. And so, kudos to the boys for that. But we have a lot of things that's going on in this episode. I'm not gonna be descriptive and break down every aspect of the show. We're just gonna touch on some plot points. One in particular, one that hurts me to my core, that affected me to my core, and reason being, in case you don't know, I am a huge Batman fan. I'm a huge Bruce Wayne fan. Has been my favorite comic book character since birth. I love Batman, even though as I get older, in experiencing the rise of Miles Morales, I'm kind of leaning towards him more now. But Batman has always been my favorite. Love him. Read the comics, watched all the movies, watched all the animated shows. I have currently looking at a Batman poster in my office. I have all this stuff, and I just love Batman. And so The Boys, which is a parody of a lot of our favorite comic book heroes. You have Homelander, who you could say is a parody of Superman. A-Train is a parody of the Flash, and so on and so forth. Well, they have a character on this show, Tech Knight. Tech Knight is pretty much a parody of Batman. And in typical boys fashion, your heroes that you grew up reading in the comics aren't the heroes on this show. This show is they're all evil in some type of way. And Tech Knight is how can I tell? One, he's racist. Two, he's oh man, I don't know how to describe him. He's just a freak. He loves to just hump holes. Wherever a hole is, he wants to hump it. Where he goes down into the tech cave or the Tech Knight cave with Huey, who's disguised as Web Weaver, who's a parody of Spider-Man, by the way, who shoots spider webs out of not his butt. He got a different hole, but it's right by his butt. And so he's disguised as him to go into this, I don't know, this social club party, this alt-right party, whatever it is. And Tech Knight wants to have relations with him, to have this dominatrix type thing with him. And he gets down into the quote unquote bat cave, for lack of a better term, and it's all these sexual gadgets and chains and cages and all this other stuff. And it's like, man, what is going on? He has a sex dungeon. It's 500 Shades of Grey. It's really crazy what's going on. But Tech Nine, that's the rapper. Tech Knight is he's a billionaire, just like Bruce Wayne is, and he's owning these prisons, these encampments, and that's what the government and Vault is using him for these encampment places, and a funny part when the boys finally go down, rescue Huey, and they have him locked up. They're trying to torture him, but he's a sycophant, you know, so he likes that. You know, they're stabbing him and all this other stuff, and he's turned on by all that. And so it's like, how do you torture somebody that loves torture, that gets off on being tortured? So they find a way. One of the dudes that he had locked up in there, it breaks out and gets to the computer and shows that he has all his bank accounts records on the computer or whatever. And so they decide to start donating his money, millions of dollars of his money to these organizations. And they're going down the list, and he's just screaming in pain every time they donate. So when they get to Black Lives Matter, he's like, no, I'll tell you everything. So when he does tell them the information, they still end up sending the money to to Black Lives Matter. I just thought that was funny as all get out. But yeah, man, this was a crazy section of the show. This Tech Nine story. Ultimately, his butler, who is quote unquote his Alfred, a black man, strangles him after he finds out what Tech Nine is doing with his money and you know, building these encampment places to imprison people, basically put people back into slavery, and that's what drove him over the edge enough to murder Tech Knight. So I thought that was a very fitting end to this despicable character. Our other plot point through this show, this episode, I should say, was Sage working with Victoria Newman to become president. You know, that's the whole point of them being at this party. Homelander is there, and A-Train is there, Sage is there, Firecracker is there as well. And the whole point of this little meeting was to invoke the 25th Amendment, whereas Victoria Newman can become the president after Robert Singer is sworn in as president and further the cause of Vault. So this was a very interesting part of the show because of the political aspects of it all. And when you look at things like the Project 2025 thing that is out there, if you don't know about it, Google it, look it up, please. It is a very interesting thing and disturbing thing, to say the least. But that's basically what this is. What they're doing is a coup. They're trying to put together a coup. But this kind of goes off the rails a little bit until Victoria saves it at the end. But Sage, being the smartest person in the world, is the one who came up with this plan. And she was going to present it to everybody at this party. But she was kind of in neutralized, to say the least, when she stumbled upon the boys trying to enter this sex dungeon that Tech Knight had. And one thing led to another, and Mother's Milk shot her in the head. Well, that would kill anybody else, but we all know that Sage has that frontal lobe thing, to whereas she, all it does is dumb her down. And she has a rapidly growing brain. That's why she's the smartest person in the world. And so for the moment, she's incapacitated and she can't present this grand plan. So Homelander tries to do it. And these politicians are asking him questions like, well, what about the oil and gas prices? What about the stock market? What's going to happen with that? What happens if the civil service people resign on us? What's going to happen? You know, how to deal with the aftermath of this quote unquote coup. And so he was getting flustered. And that's when Veronica Newman stepped up and presented it and got everybody on board. And so it's all steam ahead for that. And that's just another element that's going to make our heroes' days a little longer in this season going forward. The other point is A-Train, and I love this moment with A-Train. He's at this alt-right party, you know, and they're talking about slavery. They're talking about racist stuff, and he's there putting on a shuck and jive face, and is you know, A Train is making this turn this season that I'm enjoying. I really didn't care for A Train this entire series, but this season I am enjoying him more. I liked him for what he was, but you know, never was a major part of the series for me. But this season has been different as they kind of pivot and do a 180 with his character, but it is a true 180. It is earned. It's not just a flip. It's not just a switch on a dime. I love that. He saves Mother Milk's life in this episode, and this after Chemical. Well, this was after Mother's Milk had shot Sage in the head, and he catches a panic attack, which I completely understand because I didn't had a few of those. Uh, and Chemical goes to find A Train to get him to the hospital, and I love that scene as well. How she was communicating with him. They're in this library, and she can't speak. She didn't have anything to write on, so she's picking up these books with the titles to say what she need him to do, to the hospital, or if you don't, he'll die, and stuff like that. She'll lift up these books to tell him that, and he's like, man, if I leave, they're gonna find out, they're gonna kill me, and this, that, and the third. And she finds a book that says, "For the sake of his daughter," and she picks that up and shows it to him. And it was just a moment where I was like, "Oh my god!" I'm getting goosebumps now. The way they did it was beautiful. And A Train picks him up and speeds him to the hospital. And so as he leaves him on his gurney and was about to leave, he looks over and see this little boy around the same age as of his nephew, and the boy's just looking at him, and they're looking at each other, and A Train, at least all of these heroes here, have never truly done anything heroic, in their entire life. It's all been staged. It's all been for the cameras and all this here for clout. And A Train does this. And as the little boy is looking at him in this real moment, and the boy just smiles. And that smile just, you can tell, great job by Jesse T. Usher in this moment, his acting here. The way that little boy smile radiated on A Train, and he was able to smile too, that he finally did something. This little act, just bringing Mother's Milk to the hospital, meant the world to that one little boy, and that's all that mattered. And it was just so touching. I absolutely love that moment that he got to feel like a real hero, and it tells me that he's gonna die soon in this show because he is whenever they do that in TV shows or movies, you can expect that character to meet their demise sooner or later. I just thought that was a really great moment. The firecracker story here in this episode, where her and Starlight meet up again, and Starlight generally is trying to tell her that she's sorry, and what she did. She's not there to fight her and this, that, and the third, but she does sedate her so they can get to Huey. And so when she wakes up, and they end up going back to Vault, and she goes to Homelander and tells Homelander that, there's a mole. Cameron wasn't the mole because the boys were there. So somebody had to tip them off. And so Homelander is accusing Firecracker of this. And Firecracker is telling Homelander, which she'd been telling him the entire season, that I'll do anything for you. I'll do anything for you. And she unzips her top and squirts breast milk into Homelander's face. And at this moment, right before that, Homelander's like, I'm not sexually attracted to you. And Firecracker is like, well, this isn't about sex. This is about loyalty. And at that moment, I'm like, what is she talking about? what does she mean? You know, and when she squirts the breast milk in his face, and Homelander's reaction and like joy, like, wow, you did this for me? You did this for me? And she's like, yeah, I've been taking these hormones, you know, it's enlarging my heart. You know, eventually it'll kill me, but I want to do this for you, you know, to show you how much I mean to you. And as that scene ends, we see her nursing Homelander, which is very disturbing. It's about as disturbing as the sex dungeon scene to see a full-grown man being nursed by a woman. But that's hey, if that's what you into, that's what you into. But it is really the way they shot that. It is really disturbing because you see Homelander and he has his cape, and you know his cape is made of the American flag, and they're sitting under this painting like a big bald eagle and all this here. Coincidentally, this episode came out on the 4th of July. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm like, boy, this is so disturbing, yet so accurate if you get the message that they're sending there. I thought that was very, very interesting, and I love where this is heading with these two. We'll see how this plays out moving forward, because this will affect the relationship between Homelander and Sage, and also the relationship between Sage and Firecracker, who they've been butting heads the entire season. And so at this point, Sage not being there when he needed her, and Firecracker being his source of protein, I guess, I don't know, nutrients, and now she will be elevated higher than Sage. So this kind of puts a monkey wrench in Sister Sage playing, and so this is going to be very, very interesting moving forward. And so our final point of this episode is the Joe and Butcher relationship, the Joe and Butcher story. You have Samir, that's his name, Samir, tied up in this barn with one leg. They're torturing him in a sense, trying to get him to make this compound V virus or whatever it's called. And there's a lot of back and forth. We see that Butcher is having hallucinations with his wife, and she's like the angel on the shoulder. You have the angel on the shoulder, his wife, and the devil on his shoulder, who is Joe, who is played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, by the way. And you have that dynamic, the tugging of his conscience. And so after a back and forth, he's trying to figure it out. Well, after Shamir tells them that the only way I can make this virus that can strong enough to kill Homelander, it'll have to be airborne. And if it's airborne, it's going to kill everybody that had the compound V. That means all the soups, everybody, including Samir's wife, who is who is Victoria, and who is his daughter. They have together. The one in episode, what was it, 2? That she had the little tentacles come out of her mouth or whatever. But yeah, you it's going to kill everybody that been in contact with the V. And so Joe is telling him, well, that's fine. We get to wipe them all out. Then you have Becca, who is telling him, no, you can't do that. You know, that'll kill Ryan. You know, there's her son and all this here. And what about Chemical and others, you know, that you know. We can't do this and blah, blah, blah. And she's telling him, and all of a sudden, out the blue, Joe yells at her, tells her to shut the F up. And it was just that moment, like, even though I knew, I had kind of predicted that, I still didn't see that coming. The way they revealed it was excellent, was so perfect. Carl Urban's reaction. Look, I know a couple of episodes ago, I was talking about Anthony Starr getting an Emmy for playing Homelander, and he deserves it. But Carl Urban in this moment, in this scene, give him something. Give him something. I don't care if it's a ribbon, pin it on his shirt. I don't care. acknowledge this man. This was probably one of the best performances I've seen from Carl Urban, and he has had multiple awesome performances in his career. But I loved him in this moment when he realizes that he hasn't been talking to nobody real. You know, his wife is dead. His friend is dead that he thought was coming up with these plans. But the real gut punch is when he was talking to Joe, and he's telling Joe, "I don't want to do this. This is not what I want to do." Something to that effect. And Joe is like, "Yeah, you do want to do this because I'm a figment of your imagination, which means this is coming from you. This is out of your head." And so I'm not here making stuff up. This is a part of your consciousness. So deep down, you want to do this. So you need to go ahead and do it. And it also was revealed that Joe was the one that killed the guy in that trailer with the the stretchy guy. Can't think of his name. But he was the one that kind of took over and killed him. So yeah, man, that was such an awesome scene, so perfectly written. God, I love this show. God, I love this show. With 2 episodes remaining in this season, I am so intrigued on how we're going to wrap up this season. There's a lot of questions to be answered for this season, but that doesn't mean that they have to be answered this season, because we know we're getting another season after this, the final season, season 5. So they don't have to wrap up everything this season, but this will be a fun ride for these next 2 weeks. Loved episode 6 of The Boys. Wasn't a action-oriented show. Soups doing soups things and all this. It didn't need that. The story is what stood out here, and it was amazing, man. It was amazing. I loved it, in case you couldn't tell. I just wanted to remind you. But I would love to know, how did you think of The Boys episode 6, Dirty Business? Did you like it? Did you think it was kind of slow, or whatever the case may be? I would love to know. I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know by email, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can let me know on social media. Just search for the KB Radio Network channel on all social media platforms. Don't forget about YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind, as well as all platforms of podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Leave the 5 stars, leave the reviews, and share this show on your social media platforms. I would greatly appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of The Boys Season 4, Episode 6, Dirty Business Review. Want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.